How is everybody doing? And welcome back to another Strength Chat episode. And it's also a welcome back to a returning guest from a very popular previous episode. Today, I would like to welcome back a strength coach, author, educator, the one and only Tom Sheppard. How are you doing?
Thank you very much for the warm welcome. I appreciate it, dude. I'm very good. Very jealous of you living out there in Thailand right now when it's minus whatever here. I don't want to think about it, but living the dream over here, my friend, I must say.
Nice. Yeah. Everyone always comments about the heat, and I'm always a little bit like when I'm literally stood sweating, walking to work or anything. But yeah,
Yeah.
slowly getting used to it. But I know obviously we were chatting a little bit before we started recording. But yeah, how are you since we last spoke? What's kind of been happening in your world? What's kind of new with you?
Sure. So, over what are we changing right now? So, Naomi and I are working on our new brand that we're going to launch in the new year with a website and all that type of thing called Kaizen, which is something we've wanted for ages. We've been in like a really lucky situation where we've always been working alongside like really great people and kind of under their umbrella. We've got Tib Army with Christian Thibodeau and Elite FTS here with Dave Tate. So we've come, what I believe to be really far in our career without ever having our own thing. And people are like, you guys don't have a website, do you know what I mean? Like, or anything like that. And it's never really crossed our minds that much because we're like, well, if things are going well, why change it? But it's kind of gotten to that point where it's like, it would be nice for us to have a place where if people want to like Google us or whatever, like there's a place where like we offer our services and there's actually a bio about us and all this type of thing. So our goal with that is to kind of have a hub for the type of coaching and methodologies that we're trying to instill in people, which is getting stronger and getting fitter and all this type of thing, but trying to keep it in a more bigger picture, kind of holistic kind of way. So we're going to be selling training programs and diet plans and our online coaching, all that type of thing. But we're just trying to like create a space where people can really kind of see what we're about a little bit more and an area where we can just not necessarily advertise ourselves as such because we both suck at that. Like like most coaches, right? You kind of hate being the salesman, but just so people know who we are and what we're about. And then outside of that, I'm currently working on another book, which is going to be like a college textbook type. It's going to be based for educational courses, on advanced training methods. So basically, special methods for hypertrophy, strength, and power production, which again, just like the last one that is kind of finished now, is kind of turned into a bit of a monster so far. The 200-page limit that I thought was really adequate is probably not going to be even remotely. But that's going to be a cool one just because it's very different. It's for the educational space. So the reference list is growing and growing and growing.
Yeah.
So that should be finished by kind of summer next year, and by May of the coming year, 2026. The other book that is pretty much finished now, other than the photos and stuff like that, will also be released. So that one's going to be through Human Kinetics, and that one is about basic. The idea is to create an A through Z guide for coaches on how to create individualized programs. So it takes you from physiology and basically how strength and muscle gain happens, how to assess your client in like, what I believe to be like a thorough but also very kind of invasive way. Like it doesn't take an hour or 2 hours. So you don't have to do all these crazy tests. And then how you piece that assessment together then to create a program that's actually based on the information you glean from it rather than just like, cool, I have all this info. What does that actually mean for the program I write? So the idea is I want to try and shortcut the learning process for like new coaches when it's, because this is can be as much art as science a lot of the time. So I want to try and just cut down that learning process so they can glean a way of like when they look at like these coaches who've been doing it for 10 years and it kind of looks like voodoo magic because a lot of it is like it becomes almost subconscious in the end. You're like you look at a training program and you're like that's too much volume for them, but you're like, well, how do you know that? Like like you looked at it for five, but you know what I'm talking about, right? Like if we've been doing it for a while, that. But I want to try and shortcut the process of like hopefully you can get there quicker and make a few less mistakes
Yeah,
to
definitely.
arrive at that same point. So that's the hope. So that one will be out in May. That one again has been a really cool project to be part of. Very grateful to have these publishers who are willing to publish my inane rants, which is wonderful. And then hopefully I'm going to start writing another one for Human Kinetics and two, which is going to be basically what I want to do is create an all-in-one guide for like the technical side of lifts. Like you get like the back squat, but then all the derivatives of it, like your front squat, your zercher squat, your split squats, all that type of thing. So hopefully together they create a useful toolkit for coaches to kind of like just, fast track that first year or two where you're like, okay, I'm newly qualified, but like I don't really know how to teach half these lifts that I really need to get them doing, and I don't know how to program them. So I'm really hoping that I can just create an easier process for people with that. Fingers crossed.
Nice, cool. I look forward to seeing all of those coming out. Looks as though there's plenty of things that have been keeping you busy, and um,
Oh yeah.
you might have known from the last episode. I like to go on a couple of tangents, but as you were chatting there, I know as you know we're talking about strength training in general,
Mhm.
and from the last episode, and even you speaking there, you can see that you have all of this information, knowledge that you want to pass on,
Mhm.
share, and ultimately improve what the lifters and athletes
Mhm.
do in the gym, but also leveling up that standard of coaching so they can people can program better, coach better, all those sorts of things. When it comes to actually, writing these books, you've mentioned a couple of topics there. Is it a case
Mhm.
of these are just kind of like spilling out of your head, or do you have to kind of get into that zone of, right, I need to focus on this topic and then do this? Because, sometimes as a coach, you might be doing some marketing. You've already mentioned that you're going to do the website, and then you're coaching in person, and then, you then going to create content. How do you kind
Mhm.
of stay focused with trying to focus on one topic and then move on, if that question kind of makes sense?
Yeah, no, I get it, man. And I wish I had that nailed down better than I do, to be brutally honest with you. But when it comes to like I wouldn't class myself as a writer. Maybe that's part of the problem why I suck at it is I haven't made that transition yet, right? But um to me, writing is really draining. Like I can sit down and write training programs for 6 hours, and that's kind of like me in my wheelhouse. I've been doing that for like 15, 20 years or whatever, right? But writing books is new. And it's so different to writing articles because you have to structure it and so on and so forth so differently. So for me, that has to be like the first thing I do in the day, and it has to be early. So like I get up early, a lot earlier than like my wife, generally speaking. So like I have a couple of hours there in the morning where like it's too early for like clients to be messaging me and stuff. Not that that's a problem, but like I have like 4 till like maybe like 4 a.m. till like 7 a.m. where it's just like me and one of my dogs always gets up to like come and hang out with me. She's like an early riser. And I have that time where like nothing else distracts me. And that's when I can get stuff done that for me I find really challenging to do. And then after that, once like the rest of the world kind of starts and other things start coming in, like I try, but inevitably usually fail to get that much done. So it's just a case of like prioritizing for me. Like when I get up, I'm pretty alert and raring to go. And it gives, it's the same thing you'd say to like maybe clients who are struggling to get to the gym. It's like, if you're always struggling with other stuff getting in the way, put it first where other stuff cannot. It doesn't give any other opportunity for things to jump in the way of it, right? Like, no one is going to be saying to you, oh, sorry, you need to be here at 5 a.m. doing this thing. Like, that doesn't happen. So, like, there's nothing that can get in its way then. So, that's the way I've gotten around it. And bit by bit, I've gotten more and more productive in that window. And, like, today was what I class as like a good day. I wrote like 8 pages or 9 pages of this chapter today. But it's interesting being on this side of it, how much time goes into what you read. I remember I read somewhere that like the average writer, if they do like an 8 or 10 hour workday, they actually spend about 30 minutes of it writing, as in physically typing. The rest is like thinking or deleting stuff or rewording stuff. So only 30 minutes of it is actually putting new words that stay on the screen, paper, whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I can see that. This
Yeah.
is definitely about right. So, if I've got like a 3 hour window, I probably spend about 10 minutes actually physically typing away, but I'm getting okay at getting a reasonable amount down. And then the rest of the time, I was the same with writing essays at university and stuff like this. Like I think about it a lot, so by the time I actually sit down to write it, I kind of know what I want to say. I am terrible at like sitting down with a blank canvas. Like I can't do that. Like I was a failed artist as a teenager as well, and I was the same then. Like I couldn't have nothing. I needed like a photo or a picture or something to like semi copy. And it's the same now. Like I need a structure in my head, otherwise I'm just sat there kind of like doing nobody any good at all.
Yeah, it's funny because when you said there about the amount of time that you would actually be writing, I often sometimes think, and I'm going back to when I was at uni, it's that thing of in your head the you think it's about 4 pages long that what you've thought of, and then when you write it down, it's only about 3 lines that actually
Yep.
sums up what you're saying. But it's interesting you say about the productivity side of things because. Um, I'm not saying for the coaches listening that you need to move to a different time zone so you get time on a morning, but I know for me, and I'm not sure whether it was the same for you moving to America, but the timing over here, I know that the majority of my clients are from the UK. I've got the
Mhm.
morning until around about midday. I usually get up earlier. I've got to midday where I've got time to train, do all my admin stuff. That it's one of those things where you end up putting off and putting off because it's like, oh, I'll do this, I'll do that, and then the rest of the day is basically the stuff that I enjoy doing. All right, it becomes a lot easier to me, the coaching side of things, responding to messages, programming, and all that sort of stuff. And I think, like what you're saying there, if you can get that routine and the stuff that you keep pushing back and get that done at the start of your day, I know everyone's situation can be slightly different, but it's amazing how much time you then free up for the things that you can be more productive with. So yeah, I thought that was good in terms of just touching on that with routine. Um, with that, it kind of goes into the topics that I had in mind to chat about. And this is something that I know you've had some conversations around, and this is something that I've spoken with clients in person over here in Thailand,
Mhm.
but also online clients as well. And it's kind of that conversation around effort and intent with training, because I often feel as though those words get thrown around with no real kind of meaning or how they fit into programs or how they or why they fit into there. So I suppose the first question is what's kind of the definition to you and what does that look like in the program? Because sometimes when you say effort and intent, people think that you need to wipe chalk on your face, slap your face, and then go, whereas actually I think there's maybe a different direction you can go with that, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. I think if we're looking at intent and effort, to me, there are a couple of different like facets of it. Because you could just look at it as a whole and it becomes like this kind of incomprehensible monster where you have to do everything with the absolute best effort to the absolute best quality at all possible times. And you just like you say that to a client, you're like, what does that even mean? Like,
Mhm.
you just have to click your fingers and become like a superhero tomorrow. Like, what are the manageable chunks that I can break this down into that actually allow me to do something about it? And I think that, just to cap this off at the top so that people can kind of think maybe through it for themselves, I think a really interesting thought process sometimes would be like, imagine like you have your current training program, regardless of whether you wrote it or your coach wrote it, whatever. Imagine that you could not change it ever, right? So you are stuck with this training program. How would you get more results from it? What would you do? Like, because you can't change the sets, the reps, maybe even the weight or the exercises. Well, you just have to do what you're doing better. But how do you can start breaking that down? Well, like maybe your technique could be better. Maybe what you're saying is one rep shy of failure is not one rep shy of failure. Maybe you can perform everything with more control. Maybe you can take less rest periods. There are all of a sudden all these, if you really had to, you're stuck here, right? There are probably like 8, 10, 12 different variables that you can start coming up with where you're like, I could progress this single workout or whatever for quite a considerable amount of time before I'd actually have to like add a rep or add a plate or whatever it might be. So that can be I just think that's worth doing at some point, just to try and think like, oh, these are actually all the things I could maybe be doing better now. Because I think subconsciously people already know a lot of the time. We either just don't want to do them, or we think there are maybe lower hanging fruit or there are easier ways to get the progress that we're after. With that being said, I think probably the first and most obvious like facet of this kind of world of intent and effort or quality of work would would be sheer effort level. And everyone's going to have a different definition of that, and it is going to be entirely based on perspective. Like your idea of hard work is based on as hard as you've ever worked, which for some people is going to be less, and for some people is going to be more. Like, when you're in high school, or we call it junior school in the UK, right? I'm not sure what it would be to everyone else. Like, 5 or 6 hours of lessons a day is like this is the hardest thing ever. And then you gotta go home, you gotta do like 20 minutes worth of homework, and that's like grueling. And then you get to like an adult, or you get to university, and you're like, man, I would kill to be in high school. Like, my God, I had it. So, yeah, we all go through this, right? But all
Yeah.
that happens is like high school is still high school. It's probably not any harder or easier than it was when I did it or we did it, whatever. But our perspective on what is difficult has definitely changed. And, we go through this then to that degree with like our training journey. And that can actually be one of the greatest things it does for us if we really throw ourselves into that. And I'm not saying, like you kind of alluded to, you need to go start sniffing ammonia salts and smashing your head on the bar and getting blood everywhere and stuff like. And again, like I don't mean this in a derogatory way to people who do that, but there are plenty of people who do that and then don't actually work that hard. It's just
Mm.
they like to create a show around it, right? There are plenty of people who walk in the gym, don't say a word, no music, no nothing, and just they do hard work when no one's watching, and sometimes they're the hardest working people. So there's there's a question that maybe we need to ask ourselves is like, what is my perception of hard work actually accurate, or what is my upper ceiling actually as high as it could be? And chances are it's probably not. So in that respect, I think that's what maybe you've got a good coach and that would be great, but in some way you need to be every now and then pushing your upper ceiling for what is difficult. You should be challenging yourself. And there's a lot of like really good information there about there. I can't remember the psychologist's name who coined it, but it's something like the zone of proximal development, which is basically this intersection where a thing, a task, it can be anything. Let's say in this case it's the gym, is challenging enough that it basically means that you hit this fine line where you have to be 100% on your game to achieve the task. But the task is not so challenging that it's dangerous or it's too high risk or you are going to fail like 90% of the time. Anyone who's ever done like something like martial arts where you spar and you've got on a partner that like is either maybe a tiny bit better than you or like bang on the same level knows what I'm talking about here. Like it creates this environment where you basically achieve flow state, which is that delicate balance between this is really hard and challenging, but also fun and not dangerous in the same
Yeah.
way. And I think we should be looking to get that from the gym. And the reason that is flow state, and I don't want to get too nerdy on you here, I'm sorry, but basically you've got your dopaminergic system, which is the like go do stuff, be motivated system, and you've got like the serotonin and the GABA system, which are the inhibitory, like risk averse systems. When we're in that correct level of challenge, both of those systems are firing at a good level. And that's where we feel our best. That's also, tangentially, that's also where we find meaning, believe it or not. That's
Yeah.
pretty much the definition of meaning right there, is being challenged to that degree. We should always be looking to find that in the gym. And that doesn't mean you have to do crazy AMRAPs or intense amounts of volume. Like challenge can come from so many different things. It could be different exercises, it could be different tempos, it could be rest periods, it could be a whole bunch of different things. But a workout should challenge you in some way. And that could be from loading, but it could be from so many other things. And it could even just be the fact that now you're going to train at 6 a.m., which you're not a morning person, right? So maybe just that is the challenge in of itself. But we need to always be aware that people that we probably look up to as really hardworking, driven individuals, most people are not born that way. It's built. We actually have a part of our brain, the anterior cingulate cortex, which is basically our, should we say, our resource or our battery for willpower. And it grows when we do things that we don't really want to do.
Yeah.
When we do things that we're like, oh man, do I have to? Like, oh, okay, fine. When your coach puts like the assault bike in at the end of your workout or whatever, and you're like, well, next time you feel that way about something, that look at it as like that's growing, that little part of your brain that gives you willpower, you're growing that. So
Yeah.
next time like you've got like cookies or whatever in your kitchen and you walk past them 10 times, And then on the 11th time, you're like, okay, I'm doing it. Like if you grow that a bit more, well, then maybe that doesn't happen, or maybe you push for that extra rep or whatever. So we can look at effort or intent from that effort level, which is going to be constantly doing something that challenges you. Now, most people are going to get like that idea of RPE 10 there. And what is RPE 10? And I think it is beneficial that everyone should go there at times. Now, I'm not saying you need to train there all the time, but there's a big kind of like controversy about like should people train to failure? And I think at some point everyone should. And I think actually as a beginner, it's possibly more important, providing you do it in the right environment, like safe movements, machines, or whatever it might be, because you need to know what RPE 10 is. Like you
Yeah.
can't, if your coach is saying to you like, oh, leave one or two reps in the tank or RPE or RIR, there's all these million terms, right? We know what they mean. It means like whatever you're capable of, dial it back a tiny little bit. And it's like, cool, okay, dial it back from what? I don't know what I'm capable of. I have no idea what grinding to the point where like I am putting everything into this and the thing will not move. I don't know what that is. Or maybe I've not done it for a year or whatever it might be. So like, well, maybe I'm better at pushing myself now, or like maybe I doubt myself, or maybe I think I'm capable of more than I am. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
So every now and then, I think there should be something in that training program that does push you to RPE 10. Doesn't have to be on like a 20 rep max squat or whatever. It just needs to be something where it's like, remember what that feels like. Now, how often are you getting close to that? Because, like with anything that we do, we generally just get a little bit worse at it over time if we don't really pay attention to it. So, what we think we're pushing ourselves to like one rep short of failure, whatever it might be, and we're probably not. If we haven't gone to failure in a while, we're probably like two or three or four, or God knows how many more than that. And it's easy to do that because it just happens slowly over time. We get comfortable. Hopefully, we make progress. And like those 20-pound dumbbell curls that you telling yourself like, man, I used to hit failure on 10 of these. Well, maybe you hit failure at 20 on them now, but you're
Mm.
still convincing yourself that like 10 is a good effort when maybe it's not. So I think that's the first kind of facet to effort, intent, or quality of work is just be, should we say, humble enough to be aware that you probably aren't working as hard as you think. And also, your upper ceiling for hard work is a thing that can be pushed and grown, let's say, infinitely. I mean, you look at someone like Steve Goggins or whatever, like I bet he wasn't bored. He wasn't a toddler that did the type of stuff that he could do. Do you know what I mean? Like he built himself into that. And I'm
Yeah.
not taking away anything that he achieved, but what I'm saying is everyone else can do that same process to whatever scale that they wish. But you can't get that without getting to that. I mentioned that zone before, that zone where you are challenged enough that you have to be on your game, but not to the point where it's detrimental. Like I think the best kind of like, for anyone out there who's like a barbell lifter or a strength lifter, why it's when you know that you need spotters, but you're probably going to do it.
Yeah.
But you want them there just in case. Like you're not confident to the point where like I don't need safety pins. Like Jesus is my spotter, whatever. Sorry if that offends someone. Like you're not that confident. You're confident to the point where you think you're going to get it, but you want them there because there's that chance that you just might not. And
Yeah.
you should have something like that in your program at all times purely for that benefit. It could be a once a week jump on the assault bike and just make your life suck for a couple of minutes. Like, right now I'm doing my all of my training with mouth tape on, which is an interesting experiment, but that does include assault bike sprints. I'm not saying someone should go and do this tomorrow. This is me being weird, okay? But like doing assault bike sprints with mouth tape on is a really interesting experiment because every time you are purposely pushing and to the point where you really need that oxygen and then obviously limiting how much oxygen you can bring in. And as you get fitter, you just push harder. So like it doesn't ever get easier, but you have to deal with the same level of, say, misery. I don't know how else to put it, right? It is pretty miserable. And every time it's a challenge. Like I don't really know if I can get through. And it's 4 rounds. It lasts 4 minutes. That's it, right? But every time those 4 minutes are like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to get it. Let's say 90% of the time I do. And then every now and then there's going to be that off day where like I have to rip that mouth tape on and just be like, oh, you know what I mean? Like I just maybe on that day I just don't have the willpower for it, and that's totally fine. But the point is, every single time I'm going and doing that thing,
Yeah.
which is just reminding me that like if you can do this, all the other stuff that comes before it, you can probably manage just well. And, that's where a lot of the benefits for the gym, I think, kind of bleed out to everywhere else. Like, if you can do those assault bike sprints with the mouth tape on when your heart rate is, I don't measure my heart rate on purpose because I don't want to know what it is at that point. If you can do that, you can probably jump on this podcast, and do okay because you
Yeah.
survive that. This is easy by comparison. So I think that is a big part of it.
Yeah.
Now, if we shift away from effort, like absolute effort, intensity, the next facet of this whole conversation to me becomes, should we say, the quality or the technical side of the work that you're doing. So, if how well are you doing the work that you're doing? Like you sit down and you go to work for 8 hours a day, but how much work, what is the outcome of the 8 hours that you do, right? And we can work very intensely for short periods of time, but maybe what is the quality of the work that comes out of it? Like if I'm writing that book and I'm just writing at 100 miles an hour and it's full of grammar errors and it doesn't make any sense, then that's pointless, right? Real progress in anything is going to come from the correct level of intensity mixed with the right quality of work or output. So then we start looking into, okay, well, maybe you are working hard enough. Like maybe you are using training loads that are appropriate. You're not texting on your phone for 20 minutes in between your sets. Your loads are appropriate. Everything else, that's great. But what is the actual quality of the reps that you're performing? Like, let's take a really easy example, like a dumbbell curl, right? Like you might be using an appropriate load, but if you're only doing half the range of motion or you're arching your back and you're cheating with your hips and, all these types of wonderful things that we see, um, is the exercise even doing the thing that it's meant to anymore? Like then that's possibly even worse, right? Because now you've got a client who is turning up consistently and putting in the effort, which is the really hard part, right? The consistency and effort, right, is where most people struggle. Like, hats off to the people who are doing that. But now that effort's almost being wasted. Like that hurts to see. Like that, and it hurts as a client then because if you're not making the effort, deep down you're not. And then you might moan when you don't get the results, but really why. Whereas now you've got someone who's going in and making the effort but not getting the results. Like, man, you can imagine why that would make you want to throw in the towel. So that's why this part of it then becomes incredibly important because it's very possible to make large investments of effort and actually get very little back. And, that kind of sucks because we all want to say, like, you do the work, you get the results, and you kind of do. But it's also very possible to do all the work and get very little results if the quality of your work's very poor. Like it would be the same at any job, like you can clock in for 40 hours a week. If the quality of your work is terrible, then you're not going to last very long. And it's the same with all of this stuff as well. And so that's where, a lot of the time, most of my coaching is remote. I get a lot of lifting videos from clients. That's a great opportunity to give feedback and critique and all that time. That's probably, one of the places where I feel like I do very well, I think. But the filming of those sets is as much for them as it is for me.
Mm.
Because they're gonna watch them before they send them to me, and you can tell if they don't, because like you get them like setting up and putting their wrist straps on, and all this,
Yeah.
it's off angle, and it's looking at someone else over here. So vast majority of the time they're gonna watch them before they send them to me. So before I've even had any input, they're gonna watch them. They're gonna be like, well, first off, they're gonna see their own effort, whether that's there first for that. So that's cool. That's a good little checklist for them there. But then they're gonna know the things that I have told them to watch out for, and straight away they're gonna see whether they're happening or not. It's gonna be like, oh well, my one foot is like way too wide on my squat, or I'm not going low enough, or my head is up here where it should be here, or whatever. So straight away, before they've even waited for my feedback, they know that there's some things that maybe they could do better. But even just and I'm not saying everyone should film all their sets on a tripod, but what I am saying is that having a coach or doing that for yourself makes you mindful of the fact that you need to be mindful of how you're doing the things you're doing, right? There's an attention to detail that, and I'm sure when on the sets that they click record, they're probably trying harder to make them look better. So like even if none of us have any input, they're not sending them to anyone. Straight away, they're probably just making them look a little bit better, which is probably going to mean that their results are also better. So when it comes to these things, again, I think we need to check our ego at the door a little bit because there are, and this is where I'm going to get probably way too philosophical about training, so I apologize in advance. There are layers and levels of quality of movement that you don't know exist. And when I say you, I mean people in general, right? Um, like you don't know, like in the same way that we have people come here, right? And you have Dave Tate shout at you on a hack squat, right? You find RP 11. You find the level that you didn't know was there. You go there, and then your whole world is blown open because what used to be a 9 is now a 6, and voila. All of this can happen on the technical side or the quality side of your work there too. Like you this might be one that resonates with a lot of people. Like there's a way of doing Romanian deadlifts or anything else and not having a sore low back the next day and not feeling trashed. But for some people that's going to be a really alien concept. Like every time I deadlift, I just accept the fact that I'm sore and burnt out and whatever. But like, what if there's a way of refining your technique to where that isn't a thing? What if there's a way of squatting and your knee doesn't hurt? And what if there's a way of squatting where it actually starts to feel natural for you? Maybe this is a lift that, feels awful. It's just the one that you do because you have to do it and you have to do it. Maybe there's a way of doing it where it actually doesn't feel effortless, but it feels fluid and it feels good to do it. And everyone can get to that point with just about any lift, but there's a lot of effort that goes into that. And you look at someone like a high level Olympic weightlifter, they're doing like cleans and snatches or squats with like probably at minimum 3, sometimes maybe 5 or 6 days a week forever. And they don't stop. Why don't they stop? Because even at their level, there are things they can do better. They can get their pull, they can get their positioning better, even after doing them for a decade, like 4 days a week. So if that's true for them, and I'm not saying we need to get to that level, but let's take your average gym trainer. Think about how much room you have to improve all the lifts that you're doing. And this is going to sound really dumb, right? But there, that is even true with things like a lateral raise or a dumbbell curl. And I know that's going to sound really odd to some people, but there are things you can do with your curls that you probably don't even know that you could do right now. Like, are you rooting your feet into the ground? Are you pulling your hips down into the ground and grounding yourself like you were going to do a squat? Are you bracing? Are you holding your shoulders in the widest, most neutral possible position whilst you do your curls? Is your head and your neck in a good position? Now, all of this sounds pointless until you do it better, and then you realize it makes the curl better too.
Yeah.
Like it, but again, most of us aren't going to be aware of that, and even those of us that are probably aren't doing it very well. And then when we do start doing it well, we learn we can do it better. Like that curl felt slightly better than that curl. I mean, and we've all done this, right? Like you do a set of 5 squats and you film them because you're a good client, and you watch them, and you're like, okay, so 2 and 3 felt amazing, and 1, 4, and 5 felt like a steaming pile of trash. And then you watch the video expecting this giant disparity between them. And then you watch them and you go, they look the exact same. What is going on? But that's because like there's what even once you get your kind of external tech, let's call it that. I don't there's probably a better word for it than this, right? But there's going to be like an external facet of technique where we can see the bar is moving forward over your toes, or you're arching your back too much, or whatever it might be. But then even with once that is pretty well nailed down, there's like this internal facet of technique where like you're bracing, and are you like really activating your hamstrings and your hip flexors as well as you could be on the way down? Are you gripping the ground with your feet as hard as you could be? Like there are so many infinite things that you probably suck at in the absolute nicest way possible. And this is great because you have an infinite number of things you can improve on. Like there is no upper limit to how good that push-up can feel. Like, and one of the very first coaches I worked with, who I still very much look up to now, a guy called Lyle Rowan, based up in Dundee in Scotland. He's the type of person that could coach me whilst doing a human flag. Like he could talk to me whilst or he could sit at the bottom of a pistol squat with like 2 30-kilo kettlebells and talk to me for 10 seconds and then just stand up. Like just abnormal levels of precision of control, right? And he said something to me in one of our very first sessions, which mentally destroyed me. That's all I can say about them. And it was literally a lot of the time, it was nothing more than crawling around on the ground and things like that, but in ways that were intuitively so different and like really tuned. And he said, I've been doing push-ups since I was, 6 or whatever. So I've been doing push-ups for like 35 years. And now I feel like I'm starting to get them. And he wasn't being blasé about that. He genuinely meant that even over that time period, there were just levels to this externally simplistic movement that he was still discovering now after doing them for 35 years. And not only doing them for 35 years, doing them consciously for 35 years, like trying to dig deeper into them. And he was. And like I said, I'm probably losing a lot of people here for that. I'm sorry, but let's just, there's going to be depths of movement that the average person never needs to go to, and that's totally fine. Like leave that to the nerds like us.
Yeah.
We go down there so we can grab the one or two little bits that are actually useful for the people we coach, and maybe should we say like the average person, whatever, and we can give them to them because we've gone down there and we sift through the 1,000 other things that they don't need to know to get the 2 or 3 they do. But just be aware that you're probably at level 2 of like 100. And you probably have a lot. And this is going to be one of those really cool things where like the first 80% of the benefits is probably in like the first 10 to 20 levels. You don't need to go to level 90. Like you're talking tiny, it's kind of like a Formula One car. At some point, like you're changing nanometers on a bumper to get nanoseconds on a lap. Whereas like we're just talking about putting good tires on the car or like giving the car an extra 50 horsepower. Like that's a big change for what could be a small change in terms of your effort and what you actually change in the lift. So that to me would be the second thing there
Yeah.
that people need to focus on. Is the intensity of the effort there? And then is the quality of the effort there? And that does not only lend itself to the more complex lifts, is what I would say. There's going to be levels to every movement you do. Like your lat raises don't have to destroy your traps. Your deadlifts don't have to destroy your lower back. Your squats don't have to hurt your knees. And they don't have to feel awkward either if we're doing all the right things progressively over time and willing to get better. Like your body is just like an instrument. Like the first time you pick up a guitar and you try to play Stairway to Heaven, right? It's like the first time you barbell squat. It's gonna sound awful. It's gonna sound like a bunch of cats screeching at each other. And then you practice and you practice and you practice, and it gets better. So now you can play Stairway to Heaven, which is impressive. And that is your back squat. Like your back squat is good. But just because you can play Stairway to Heaven doesn't mean you can play Jimi Hendrix. Like that's your front squat or your bench press or whatever. So you're probably going to learn Jimi Hendrix quicker if you're good enough to play Stairway to Heaven, but you're not going to know it straight away. And you're still probably not going to play it like Jimmy did unless you play it for a long time. But you probably never need to. Your family at Christmas is probably going to be happy with, watered down Jimi Hendrix, just playing the right notes. It's cool. And that's fine for everyone else. But just be aware that whatever you're doing, you could probably work harder over time. You don't need to like you said, start drawing the chalk lines on your face and listening to your playlist or whatever. Like over time, incrementally, you are capable of working harder. And over time, incrementally, you are also capable of working better.
Yeah.
Because, I'm sure this might be a great example for maybe some coaches who are listening now, but like you and I could probably go back and look at the very first training program we wrote for the very first client we wrote a program for, and we would be red in the face and horrified, right? But at the time, that was the best quality of program we could write, and it probably took us a long time to do it. We probably
Yeah.
sat there for a good while. And now we're knocking out programs that are not only qualitatively better, but probably require way less effort because we have worked very hard at learning more. So now writing those things is a relatively lower amount of effort. And this is very similar to what we're alluding to here. But I do think there's like a third kind of facet to this here. Give me one sec. To this intent, and that is, we can work very hard and we can do our lifts well. Or, it could be anything. It could be doing our cardiovascular work well or our intervals work well or whatever. But we always need to remember that what we're doing has context. So there's a why. There should be, or at least there should be a why
Yeah.
behind everything that we're doing, right? My coach has given me split squats because they don't like me. Whatever, right? No one likes split squats. Okay. But even within a split squat, there's a lot of different ways you can do a split squat. I can sit straight down. I can kind of sit my hips back and let my hips hinge a little bit more. Or I can stay kind of more upright and I can push that knee forward as far as I can. All of those do different things. Like pushing the knee very far forward is going to make that split squat a little bit more quad dominant. Or I can kind of flex the hip a little bit, sit my weight back more, and it kind of looks like a pseudo Bulgarian, like rear foot elevated split squat. And that's going to hit my glutes and my hip extenders more. I'm still doing a split squat. I'm still doing it to the required effort, and I'm still executing it very well. But there are different ways that I can execute it. So now we get into, should we say, intent or desired outcome? I'm not really sure what you would call this, but it's important because if I have been given, should we say, that split squat to grow my quads, and I'm doing a very, very well executed posterior chain dominant split squat, I'm not going to get what I want, but I'm still making the effort and I'm still executing it well, but I still don't get what I want. So this is where we need to add kind of context to why am I doing the thing that I'm doing? For example, another example, let's take the bench press. Wonderful exercise that we all pretend we don't love, but do. And we can do that with the goal of moving as much weight as humanly possible, like a powerlifter would or a strength athlete would. And that's a totally fine goal. Or I could do that bench press with the intention of maximizing the amount that I grow my pecs. There's going to be a reasonable amount of crossover, but there's also going to be plenty of differences, like the grip, the setup, how I execute the reps, maybe the tempo I use, even just the thought process. So, for example, same way on the, and there's going to be individuals here who can probably resonate with this, but if they don't, go to the gym and do this. So you're going to put a weight on the bar that, let's say, you can do 10 reps with. So it's not crazy heavy, 70%, whatever. And you're going to do it like a power lifter or a strength athlete, right? So our goal is going to be, we're going to take that weight, we're going to do it for, say, 5 reps. So it's not going to kill you. And your goal is to just put as much force into that bar as humanly possible. Good technique, like, so we're not changing anything here between the two variants. Just you're going to do 5 reps where the goal is just bring that bar down and then throw it through the ceiling on each rep. Maximal acceleration, maximal force. Cool. Rack it. Take a couple of minutes, make a tweet, check your email, whatever it is you do. Now take the bar again. Once you've had adequate rest, we do 5 reps again. But this time, your goal is to be the bro. You're going to be the bodybuilder right now. Your only goal now is you want to work your pecs. Today is pec day. Whatever. I don't care, right? That's the only goal. So now when you bring the bar down, when you press it up, all I want you to think about is contract your pecs as hard as humanly possible. The speed in which the bar moves does not matter. What matters is there's the greatest amount of tension in your pecs. You can use the same grip, you can use the same setup, but it will feel immensely different. It will move different, it will feel different. It might look different, even if the bar path is kind of the same, setup is kind of the same. You can put them side to side and you can just subconsciously, I don't know, even if everything else kind of, they look different. The tension, the dispersion of tension is different. So that is like the third aspect of intent or effort, in my opinion. And I'm sure there are plenty that I'm missing, but I think 3 is probably enough for most people. So when you're doing the work you're doing, you have to always keep the context in mind of, well, why am I doing the thing I'm doing? What is the desired outcome? And how do I execute this thing to get the desired outcome? Like for me, we mentioned the assault bike sprints earlier, right? With the mouth tape on. I started doing this because I snore really bad. And there is no reason I should. My nose is good. I don't have a crazy thick neck. I'm aerobically reasonably fit. I mean, I'm not going to win the CrossFit Games anytime soon or the London Marathon, but I'm not heavy breathing, tying my shoelaces. I'm doing okay. There's no real reason I need to. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to start training and doing things like that with mouth tape on because I want to be able to sleep with mouth tape on. And at first, when I tried it, man, like I know everyone says, like, it's a really easy fix. I put the tape on and I was lay there for hours. I was like, this is weird. Like, I just can't get around it. Like, it's strange. It's weird. So I was like, I'm going to train. I'm going to do my assault bike sprints with on. And lo and behold, like maybe a month later, I was like, I'm going to try again. And gone, sleep. Easy. No problem. So in and this is a really weird example, I know, but someone's going to look at me doing the assault bike sprints there and be like, why on earth would you, if you're aiming for like intervals and maximum output, power output, maximum oxygen consumption, all these wonderful things, why on earth would you do that with mouth tape on? Well, that's why. That's why I did it. So the context is important. And if that is someone's end goal, that would be a good thing for them. Or maybe they want to cap how hard they can work and they want to build up more lactate and more CO2. And that's the goal that they want to get at that intervals because, maybe let's say they are a CrossFit athlete and they just need to be good at dealing with that lactic acid, that high CO2 environment. They just need to get comfortable dealing with that. Cool. Go do your assault bike sprints with your mouth tape on. You'll get there real fast. You won't have to work as hard to achieve the desired outcome.
Yeah.
Right now, we've got our sprint cyclist in, or someone who just casually wants to be able to sprint a cycle really fast. Cool. Do your bike sprints without mouth tape because your power output's going to be higher, your oxygen consumption and cycling is going to be greater. That makes more sense. But we're doing the same thing with the same level of effort in the same way. Just a tiny little detail can change the outcome quite considerably. And it's going to be the same with everything that you're doing, right? Let's take we mentioned the split squat and the bench press, but let's just take something like a front squat, or let's say Zercher squat, because front squats are awful and most people can't do them. Squats are pretty approachable for most. Like most of us can put a bar in the crook of our elbows. Now, let's say I've been given these because my quads are just need some work and back squatting isn't doing it. I go and I brace well, I keep my back in a good position, I hit depth, the effort is there. But every single rep, the hips are going, and then we're doing this squat good morning, right? Now, like I'm not out of alignment, I'm not doing anything badly, but is that loading my quads as it should? Probably not, because I'm just going like that. All that weight's kind of going on the posterior chain and I'm kind of hip hinging it up. If I've been given this exercise to specifically strengthen my quads, that's probably not a great way to do them. But if I'm like a strong man who's doing them because like I have to go and do like a Conan's wheel event or a yoke Zercher carry, anything where I just have to handle heavy weight in my arms for whatever reason, that's probably fine. I don't need to strengthen my quads in this context, right? So that would be the third one for me.
Yeah.
But and I realize like you're not getting a word in edgeways here. But what I would say before I end my tirade of words towards you and the audience would be all three of these. We've got intensity of effort, kind of quality of effort, and then I guess context of effort would be the only way I could probably sum that up right now. All of those are underpinned by awareness or attention. You have to know that you're not working hard enough. You have to know that you're cutting your squats high. You have to know that, oh, I'm meant to be getting a really good connection with my pecs with these dumbbell presses, and I'm not. You have to, if you're just going through the motions in the gym or anywhere in life, whatever, you don't notice any of this. All of this is off limits to you. And your ability to pay attention is going to be paramount to that. It just makes me it reminds me of, I have no idea why. There's a book called Island by Huxley, which is really, really good. Should read it at some point. And there are the birds on the island, and they're trained, and all they do is say here and now and detention. Those are the two phrases they say. And the reason for that is because the idea he's trying to get across is all of your life is happening right now. And all the things that you want to get out of life are determined by your effort right now, not tomorrow, not yesterday, whatever. So if those birds were following you everywhere and saying here and now and attention, you might go mad. But you would probably also pay attention to what it would be a nice reminder of whatever you're doing right now, pay attention to how you're doing it. And then all of these things that we've discussed, they open up to you as like potential avenues of improvement. But if you're going through the motions and spinning your wheels and just ticking boxes, all of that is completely off. It's a world you're not even aware of. So if people take anything from that massive tirade of words I just threw at you, please pay attention, because then all of the stuff we discussed might just become apparent to you anyway, regardless of whether you listen to a word of that or not. If you just go into the gym and you're genuinely present with what you're doing, you may make all this discovery on your own that you could do these better, or like this is not having a desired outcome, and you might intuitively get to that end point anyway. But that would be kind of the underpinning principle to all of that would be what
Yeah.
I'd say.
I think it's similar to when we last spoke. I think what I really like is the examples that you use on there, which I think at some level people can relate to and be like, ah, yeah, those reps did say the same. Just on the tape,
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about this as you were chatting. Is that from? Did you read that in the book called Jaws, where it's about your teeth and how you breathe? Um, from that book, have you read that?
I have, but I didn't actually connect that.
Ah,
So
right.
thank
Yeah,
you.
there's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
there's a
Thank
little
you
bit
for
in
that.
there because again, a little bit of a tangent. I went away with some friends at the start of this year, and we were sharing a room, and he put tape across his
Mm-hmm.
mouth, and I was like, "What are you doing?" And then obviously I read the book, and I was like, "Ah, okay,
Mm-hmm.
okay, that makes sense." It's only a small part in there, but it's supposed to help with your breathing and your jaw and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, no, no,
Um,
you're
I was
absolutely
interested.
right. I
Yeah.
just, man, that was a long time ago I read that, I feel. I don't know how old that book is, but if like I didn't connect when I've been doing this for about a year now with the whole mouth tape thing, and I never like cocked it back to that. You know, I never
Yeah, I
connected
only
the
read
dots
it.
again.
Did I read it this year? Yeah, I must have read it this year, or maybe the end of last year. Anyway,
Mm.
with the
Good reference there.
yeah, I completely agree that I think people underestimate how much they can work. And the example was going through my. It was actually yesterday in a session, and
Mhm.
when you're talking about like that enough work, you know, where they feel like they need a spot, I was just there to
Mhm.
support her. I always say that I would never put a weight on the bar or suggest a weight on the bar that I think that they
Mhm.
couldn't do. So I was just stood there, half spotting,
Yeah.
half just kind of like giving her that encouragement, and then all of a
There you
sudden
go.
it's like, oh, wow, I've done that weight, and then because I recorded it and had a look, and they can see what I can see, which I
Mhm.
think sometimes in the moment, and I've done it before, you know, I'm sure you've had it before, where at the time, like there should be some level of effort, like it should feel
Mhm.
as though you are lifting some weight. So it's always going to feel heavy. It's never
That's
going to
right.
feel as fast. But then when you watch it, you can see what's going on from there. It's a little bit like if you're watching a football or a rugby game, you know,
Mhm.
you can spot things and
Yeah,
see things and be like, well, actually, you know, this is how we're going to go. This is how we're going to go from there. Whereas one thing that was kind of going through my mind. And this is kind of relating into how do all those kind of have three principles. You know, if we're talking about, you mentioned strongman, if we're doing powerlifting, the intent of things is going to be different. So I will get round to actually what the question is, but especially doing the strength and conditioning classes over here, I've had people that do high rocks, CrossFit. I've
Mhm.
had a powerlifter come over.
Mhm.
I've had people who are just doing combat sports and how they all. So, for example, on Wednesday, I usually do the main exercise is pull. So, main exercise is going to be deadlift. seeing how many people, different people set up. We've got people bouncing the plates off the floor. We've got somebody taking the time setting up. We've got some people just rounding the back more so.
Mhm.
Especially over here, it's Mai Tai, so they're quite rounded.
Mhm.
The reason why they'd probably be doing deadlifts is slightly different. But in terms
Mhm.
of when you're talking about performance and applying it to that, how
Mhm.
much can all of those variables have an impact on performance? Because we've spoken a lot there about actually within the session, but ultimately people have goals, whether it be the
Mhm.
general population who just maybe want to get generally stronger, learn
Mhm.
technique, get more confident in the gym, to let's just say powerlifters who want to um, get a bigger deadlift,
Mhm.
get a bigger total. So how can we apply that, and how much of an impact do all these things actually have on performance as like the end product, if you like?
That's a great point. And I really like that because really the outcome when we're talking about those three facets there, the reason I believe that those are important is because none of us, oh, sorry, let me rephrase that. Very few of us are doing the workouts that we're doing, or even doing the things we're doing, because they are the desired outcome in of themselves. Like I'm not following my diet plan because following my diet plan is the end goal. I'm following my diet plan because there is an end goal that I hope the diet plan gets me. And, I'm not squatting whatever for 5 sets of 10 because my dream is to be able to squat this weight for 5 sets of 10. Like, I'm not like,
Yeah,
cool, mission accomplished, right? We want transfer. We want an outcome that is separate to the thing that we hope the thing will have transference from. And that is where I believe these three things come in that let's take your Mai Tai individual there, like you might look at him and he's doing like say his Zercher squats with quite a rounded upper back, say, and you might look at that and go, well, that's a bit weird. That's not how we teach it in the textbooks, right? And you say, well, next time he has to try and pick someone up off the floor, whatever I don't know about my ties, you can probably tell, I'm sorry. But let's say that person is grappling with someone over and they have to pick them up. They're not picking someone up off the floor or whatever, or holding someone up with their back here. That's never, ever, ever going to happen. They're going to be doing it in that position. And yes, there's, not everything needs to be super sport specific. There's always going to be variance here, but maybe that guy is doing it that way because they have found that, or girl, gets the best transference that way because they need to be strong in that position. And at some point, to get the best outcome, they need to load that position. And here they are. Maybe for all we know, they've done like 3 or 6 months, like a whole macro cycle of upper back, like pendlay rows and upper back work and strengthening that area. Or maybe they've been doing their Zercher squats with like what we would say better posture, and now they're, 8 weeks out from a fight or, whatever it might be. And now is the time to get specific. And now is the time I need to be doing them in this way. So, but even with that, we've got this variance in that would be a variance in like the third facet that we talked about. That would be the intent. But let's say now the intent has changed. Now we're not doing a Zercher squat for this outcome over here. We're doing it for this grappling based outcome over here. Okay, that's fine. But now we still have the facets of quality and how close we are and the quality of the execution relative to that desired outcome. It's just the context has changed. But those things are still incredibly important. And I think, when you're talking about how important are these things for people to make progress, what I would say is go into, your average gym, or even just think about your own kind of fitness journey. How many times have you been putting in what you feel is adequate effort, and maybe to the outside looks like adequate effort in any definition of the word effort, and you don't get what you want? Like it's most of us probably turn around and say most of the time.
yeah,
Like we spend considerably more time not getting to where we want to be than getting to where we want to be. But very few of us, and probably very few of us rather, who are like listening and we're invested enough to be listening to a podcast about these things. Very few of us are there because like we're just sat at home eating ice cream and not doing anything. Like most of us are doing something that should be t at least tiptoeing us towards that that outcome. And then the other question I would pose to these individuals is, how many times have you swapped your training program, swapped your exercise, changed your diet plan, changed your trainer, changed your gym, whatever, like all of these things? How many things have you changed and not gotten any closer?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people are going to say, ah, okay, yeah, like I've gone keto, I've done high carb, I've done low carb, I've done intermittent fast. I'm still not there. Well, same thing with training. Like you've done like circuit training and powerlifting and all these other things, and you still don't look the way you want or perform the way you want. Well, any training program executed poorly in these three facets is not going to work well. It doesn't matter what your goal is, how you want to train, how you want to eat, whatever, quality of effort, consistency of effort, like intensity of effort has to be present. Otherwise, none of them work. So when you say how integral is it to people's results, I would say it's more integral than anything. And I know that's a very big statement to make, but the only reason I say that is because I have watched every type of training program, every type of diet style, everything you can imagine. I have watched so many different types work incredibly well when they sometimes when they shouldn't, right? Honestly, there, I've seen the most crazy training programs that should never work, and I have seen the most incredible, scientifically accurate, perfectly written training programs, diet plans fail miserably. And how can that be? There must be some unifying factor behind them that's like a bigger umbrella that sits over the top of all of these things that determines your outcome more so than the individual things that we're talking about there. And I believe this is it. You can walk in an average, let's say CrossFit. CrossFit is super varied. That's why I'm picking that. I'm not picking on it in any way, although I think they do a lot right, more right than wrong, to be honest with you. You can walk in an average CrossFit gym and you can see people incredible shape, doing really like fantastic snatches and cleans and gymnastic movements, these really complex, difficult things. And then in that same gym, with the same equipment, with the same coaches, you can see people butchering
Yeah.
the exact same thing. Well, what is it? It's not the environment, it's not the coaching, it's not the program, it's not the equipment, it's the execution. It's how they're doing it, it's how well they're following it. And that can be the only really like obvious explaining answer there as to why this. And that's just a little bit of like a microcosm there, example that really amplifies out to everything. Like we live in an environment now where there's so much incredible information, so much incredible technology that can work in our favor if we want it to. But we absolutely should take advantage of that. But the one thing all of that stuff cannot do is do quality work for you. Like the day, I don't, like, dude, if you ever find a way where you can do your clients' workouts for them, like and get there, like you're gonna be a billionaire, you know.
Yeah.
And like I want to work for you when you figure that out. But that's the one thing that we can't, So and again, we can ask that same question to individuals. Why is it that? And I get there's a lot of misinformation, but there's a lot of damn good information. Let's not lie to ourselves here, right? There's an incredible amount of information. Like we have more like protein bars and protein shakes and gym memberships are like more affordable and easy to get than ever. Like, why are we still struggling with the same stuff? Why are we all not, I'm not saying this should be everyone's goal, right? But why are we not all walking around like jacked and strong? Like, why is this not happening, right? And this is it because you can't cheat the system. And the system is effort, quality of work, and context, in my opinion. And like I said, I'm extremely aware that there are things I'm sure I'm missing, but those are the three that I think at least make up a huge part of this equation, with regards to why am I not getting to where I want to be? Because it's the only thing that can't be done for you. And
Yeah.
I think when you start to realize that, it can be like not a nice realization because it's kind of like it's all your fault, which kind of sucks at first, right? Like nobody wants to be told that. But then when you accept that it's all your fault, you also simultaneously accept that it's all in your hands too, which
Yeah,
is actually really cool. Like maybe you don't need, and I'm a terrible advertiser here, right? But maybe you don't need a different coach or even a coach at all. Maybe you don't need the latest fancy training program or supplement. Maybe you just need to do all the stuff that you think you need, like the stuff you're doing right now, just do it better. And maybe that is the only thing that's stopping you making progress. And what I will, not that, my fitness journey is anything spectacular, but all I will say is the times that I have doubled down on that level of that kind of idea of self-responsibility with regards to those things, I have made considerably more progress. And quite often using the most rudimentary, simple things. And, what I'm doing right now is kind of a good example of that. I basically over 2 years now. And I've just been tweaking it very slightly. The only thing I've done is follow the same diet plan for 2 years,
yeah,
basically. Like I tweaked it. I want to gain weight a little bit more now. I want to lean out a little bit more, but the basic structure and the tenets of it have remained the same. And I was always someone who like thrived on variety and felt I needed it. And lo and behold, the last 2 years have been the times when I've probably made the most considerable progress and also been happier in the process, I would say too, because you're not second guessing all the time. Because you're like, no, I'm reasonably confident. Like, sure, maybe I could make 5% more results if I did this or that, but I'm confident that 90% of this lies in my hands. And
yeah.
with my quality of effort, intensity of effort, etc. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put the blinkers on and just worry about that. Like I'm gonna follow it every damn day. Again, Christmas Day when I'm traveling, and again, I'm not saying other people should do this, but all of this is I'm an N equals one experiment. That's kind of how I look at this. And I know a lot of coaches do the same, right? We don't make progress because we're too busy making all the mistakes we don't want you to make. Um, yeah, it's different and it works. And I'm not saying I didn't think like this anyway, but it's really nice to have it hammered home when it's yourself and
Yeah.
you're trying to espouse these things to other individuals as well. And you go through this process more so to like a deeper level yourself then. And you're like, no, you know what? Actually, I'm a nerd and I have delved down the rabbit hole of infinite complexity with diet, with supplements, with training, and I'm sure there are layers of complexity that I don't even know exist, right? But I would like to think I've gone down the rabbit hole quite far. And the wonderful thing about going down the rabbit hole and coming out the other end is like it's actually way simpler than we want it to be
Yeah.
for the most part. Like if you're the Olympian at the whatever the next Olympics is, and you're going for gold rather than silver, infinite complexity is definitely probably what you need, right? But you still can't escape these things we're talking about here. Like you can have the most convoluted, like 4 year training program, but if you don't execute it well, you don't get anywhere anyway.
Yeah.
It's just there's added layers. You don't remove the basic tenets as you get further along the path. They actually become probably more important, if anything, because you have less that you can get away with. But for the other 99% of us mortals out there, these like you probably don't need a new training program. You probably don't need a new diet strategy. You probably don't need a fancy new exercise that you saw on Instagram. You probably just need to work harder, work better, and constantly remember why you're doing each individual thing that you're doing and just keep that in mind better too. And I genuinely think you might be amazed at how much progress you can make when you do that better.
100%. I completely agree with that. I mean, I know we spoke at the start about, information. You've mentioned the books that you're writing, and those topics are interesting. I love
Mhm.
talking about them. I love learning about them because I think it's always important to kind of um, keep sharpening your tools and just keep that knowledge there and learning, of different ways of doing things. Recap. Are you actually still doing those things? Because it's like with anything. You mentioned earlier about your very first programs. There's things that cycle around, for example, and then sometimes you're like, oh. I've not used that for a while, or yeah, I need to remember that. But ultimately, if you're not going to put the effort into it, there's a couple of phrases as you were speaking there, and I'm pretty sure now that I've got older, when I was growing up and playing rugby, my coach used to um, give these phrases. That's why I'm like, have you ever seen the film Any Given Sunday?
Hmm.
Yeah, so the speech where it's like the inches are all around you. I think that's why I love phrases like that because he used to throw these phrases out at us. And one thing that he said, he was like, the attributes or what you actually need to progress and get better are free. Like
Hmm.
it's free to put effort in. It doesn't mean yes, you need maybe knowledge and an understanding, but you can get that from a coach. You can get that from mentioned before about if you're training with Dave Tate, you're gonna maybe find that extra gear a little bit more, and that's why I've made a point of going and training at other gyms and learning, and you can find that, but you still need to be able to put that effort in. Whereas I often feel as though people are willing to spend money on this new knee sleeve, this new belt, this new barbell,
Hmm.
this whatever else it is. Whereas actually, you mentioned about doing the bicep curl, which people would think I know how to do a bicep curl. Whereas actually, just taking your time to think about it, um, and you mentioned earlier about that kind of like flow state. I think you can get that with training. You just need to be aware of it. And the example that was actually going through my head when you were speaking there. So obviously, combat sports over here are massive. Like I've never seen so many like boxing gyms in such a small area. And was chatting to one guy. He actually coaches the Muay Thai at Titan, and he was doing a neck exercise, band around his top of his head. Was doing that. He was doing it on a bench and lifting it up. And I looked and I was like, you could see that he was concentrating on what he was doing. I then went and trained at another gym and saw people doing the exact same thing, and they were just like lolling their head around. And the more I've got to know him, and the more I was chatting, he's been doing that exercise since he's been over in Thailand. He's an English guy. He's been
Hmm.
doing that consistently for 3 years, the same exercises, the same movements, and just nudging it up. I got chatting a little bit more, and basically, over the last 2 years, he's not been knocked down because obviously his
Yeah.
purpose is obviously
Yeah. Yeah.
if you can take a punch, do you know what I mean? Whereas other people are probably watching that and being like, "Oh, I just need to do that." Whereas there's a difference between somebody who has the power to take a punch and keep going than just putting a band around the head and just moving around. There's got to be some
Yeah.
thought process behind it, and as well do it consistently. It's the same with weight training. Similar conversation yesterday. The woman who I said was squatting and I spotted straight away, her question was, well, how much can you squat? And I was
Yeah.
like, told about my squat. But then it was a case of, but then again, I've been training for 10 years. You know,
Yeah.
yes, there's been times where, like for example, when we first came over to Thailand, I wasn't training as consistently because we were moving house, we were in hotels before we were actually settled. But the majority of those 10 years, I've been training. But it's a little bit like the example that I use is it's like being the CEO of a company. You don't wake up one morning and all of a sudden you run a multinational business. You clock in every day and you build up to it. It's just that that time investment, but that effort, because I think sometimes people are surprised if they put little effort in, you get little reward. Whereas actually, like what you were saying, the more effort that you put in, you get that little bit of a reward. So yeah, I thought there was some really good examples, and maybe just a reminder for people that look, training can be really complex, which is cool, and we can dive into that. But equally, sometimes training can be really simple and really effective. So I know you've thrown out some gold nuggets throughout this chat, but the last question, Tom,
Hope
would be
so.
for the coaches, lifters, general population listening. What would be your
Mhm.
take on points or words of wisdom?
Oh man. Honestly, I think I think the one, and I think this is probably the most exciting thing that we can say, and you can start to get your head around is there is just honestly no upper limit to how well you can do the thing that you're doing. And, that it sounds really abstract and maybe a bit scary to some at the first, but I think that's also really exciting because how do you, that good training and like most things, like you mentioned being a CEO there, like you go and talk to someone who's CEO of a multi-million dollar company or whatever, I bet their regular day is pretty boring, right? And it's the same with training, right? Like most people are going to end up doing the same, like probably 10 exercises for the next 10 years if they last that long. On the face of it, good training, like good and almost anything, Muay Thai practice, whatever, is actually pretty doldrum and pretty boring until you look at it through the lens of there is an infinite number of things, micro adjustments that you can introduce and improve upon that will radically transform whatever the thing is that you're doing now between now and a long enough time frame in front of you. Um, it really is that it really is true in everything that you do. And once you start looking at every workout, and like I said, it could apply to anything. When I say workout, really, it can apply to anything in truth, right? But when you walk into each one and your attitude is, what is the best that I can possibly do this thing today? This workout. Every set is how well can I execute this? It really does change things. And I think, you gave a great example there with spotting your client. We've all seen examples of like that where like you kind of have to take the rose tinted glasses off for a moment and accept that like, oh man, I can do things that I didn't think I could do. Like all of a sudden now you say you normally train on your own, right? And you're adamant that you're a really hard worker. And now you got you back spotting or whatever or handing out the bar and you get an extra 2 reps and you're like, oh man, like you didn't just get 10% stronger. You got 10% more confident, maybe, or
Yeah.
maybe you didn't want to be embarrassed and you wanted to impress your coach or your friend that you're training with, and you're like, oh damn, like that's you can choose to ignore that, or you can have that realizing moment where you're like, man, I just don't work as hard as maybe I think I do, or like I don't. I know I had the same thing, man. Like when I was at the Shaolin Temple in Europe, you're holding these poses and these stretches and there was I think at the retreat I went to I think there was 90 of us, like it was cool,
Wow.
like to get 90 people all with the same kind of mindset and end goal in the same place is actually quite a rare thing,
Yeah.
and you're all there doing these stretches and they look like nothing on the outside, right? Like you're stood there with your arms out, but there's intent to the stretch that comes with it. So you're all there standing with your arms out and it looks ridiculous to the outside, but like man, your chest, your arms, your neck, your fingers are burning, right? And you're like, well, everyone else is still here. You know what I mean? Like, and I mean this in no disrespectful way, but you're like, oh man, the old lady across from me hasn't given up yet. Like, there's no way that I am, right? It's like, and I've come home. Obviously, I do all the same stuff. Do you think I get even near half the time that I got when I was there? I'm the same person. I mean, I should be better at these things now, right? I've been practicing them for months.
Yeah.
Like, what? I should be better. Everything about me says that they should be better, but I'm not. Why? Because on an average day to day, I can't get myself to the same place that I was in when I did those. And not only did we do those stretches, we did hours of it every day for like a week, hours, right? I felt amazing, by the way, by the end. Um, so there's that's to me that's an interesting example, like with the client there, like the client can't do the weight, you stand behind them, they can do the weight or they get an extra 2 reps or whatever. I'm there with those 90 people and the Shaolin monks and masters or whatever watching. You do things that you can't do otherwise, and but on a smaller scale we're able to chip away at those things. Like I'm sure if I do those stretches for the next 2 years, I can probably get to the same place that I was, sorry, when I was at the temple, And that's the real battle there. That's the real win there is every time you go into the gym or whatever it might be, you're going to scratch away at that upper ceiling if you do it well enough. And that's again In 5 years' time, you do that, you scratch away at that little upper ceiling every time you go in. That's when people turn around to you in 5 years and be like, man, how do you do what you do? And you just look so normal doing it. You know what I mean? Like you go in and you train like a bit of a lunatic, what most people would say probably. And like you don't, it doesn't look hard to you. It's like, well, it doesn't look hard now because it's been hard every single workout leading up to that.
Yeah.
That's why now what looks really difficult from the outside kind of looks normal because that is normal for me now. Hard is normal, but
Yeah.
like it's that same person that you look up to that you think works super, super hard. There's a place they can go and they will get not humiliated, but humbled, right? Like I thought the word humiliation there, that's wrong. But there's a place they can go and be humbled. Like you can be the best Muay Thai fighter in your gym back home in Birmingham or in the UK, right? And you come over to Thailand and you start in that gym on day one, you get absolutely floored,
Yeah.
right? That's awesome. But back home, that person is somebody else's idol. Do you know
Hmm.
what I mean? They're looking to them thinking, how on earth do I get to that? And I suppose the inspiring and equally depressing truth is one really difficult workout day session at a time.
Yeah.
But
Definitely.
the truth is you have no idea where your upper ceiling is.
Yeah.
And
And the,
it's exciting. I genuinely believe that for everyone.
yeah, and that's what it's been kind of like a running theme through this, but there's levels, there's levels
Mhm.
to everything, and I always go back to the first British Championships I competed at.
Mhm.
I warmed up on the same platform as Tony Cliff, obviously at the time,
Mhm.
um, world champion, multiple British
Yeah.
champion, and I always remember like I'd got everything on and I was like, yeah, I'm good to go. And he just looked so relaxed, and then he
Mhm.
gets underneath the bar, and it's just awesome. It's just awesome to watch, and I'm sure for him to go and train somewhere else with other
Mhm.
elite level lifters, like you need to surround yourself with them to show what that next level is. Whereas, yeah, I think sometimes if you just stay in that same space, you're going to struggle to find that extra element of effort or intent, to push yourself a little bit more, because again, everything we do things, the example that you used about you don't just follow the nutrition plan because you're following the nutrition plan. You need like you want the end result from it. So if you put effort in, you're doing it for a reason to get those results back. So I thought that was a really, really good chat, Tom. I really enjoyed speaking to you the first time. Was awesome catching up with you with today. For everyone listening
Mhm.
who might not have listened to the first episode, or want to see the content that you put out there, reach out to you, speak to you, ask you any questions, where could people find you or reach out to you?
Okay, this is a good one because I changed my Instagram handle recently, so I got to make sure I get it right now. I'm pretty certain it's Tom underscore Kaizen because that's going to be our new website and brand that I talked about. So Kaizen is Kaizen. Uh, it's a Japanese term that basically means like constant refinement, which we thought was kind of like an apt name to
Yeah.
represent what we're trying to do with our work and with ourselves. So Tom underscore Kaizen Instagram is the only social media I have. Like one is enough for me. Like I can't handle more than that. Um, I I put out a lot of stuff there. We're on the Elite FTS YouTube channel quite a lot as well. I co-host quite a few of the Table Talk podcast episodes through Elite FTS as well. So that'll be another good place to kind of find out stuff that I'm doing or like content there. Um, People can reach out to me on email. I don't mind Tom at elitefts.net there as well. And soon, I'm not depending on when people are watching this. By January 2026, our website should be up and running. It should be Train Kaizen, Train-Kaizen, I believe. So Google that and you'll find us there too.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Tom, for taking the time to jump on again. Thanks a
That
lot
was a
to everyone
pleasure.
listening, and I will see you all next week.